All right, this is a screencast from Module 11, Skill Builder number 6, and we're still working with powers and exponents and how to combine those. Okay, so we have power of a product. Let's say you have A times B inside the parentheses raised to the n. Okay, A times B in parentheses raised to the n. The n applies to both of these items, so a to the n times b to the n. Let's do this one. 2x is inside the parentheses to the third power, so that third power applies to both the 2 and to the x. So what you wind up having is 2 to the third times x to the third. And if you can simplify that, 2 to the third is 8, so that would be 8x to the third. Okay. A times b in parentheses raised to the negative 2. Well, we can start off with that's a to the negative 2 times b to the negative 2. Remember that a raised to the negative 2 is the same as 1 over a squared. B to the negative 2 is 1 over b squared. So when you finally simplify, you're going to have 1 over a squared b squared. Okay, 1/4 r to the third. Okay, so that's 1/4 to the third, and that's r to the third. Okay, so let's deal with this. That third, let's hop over here and do a couple of these problems, and then we'll come back so that we know exactly how to deal with this 1/4. Okay, so our next rule is power of a quotient. So let's say that you have a fraction a over b, and all of that's in parentheses raised to the n power. Well, that means that a is raised to the n power and b is raised to the n power as well, just as long as b is not 0. All right, so if we have 3/5 in parentheses raised to the second power, that is 3 to the second power divided by 5 to the second power. And that's going to be 9/25. Okay, 1/4 raised to the negative 3 power. That is 1 to the negative third divided by 4 to the negative third. 1 to the negative third really is 1 over 1 to the third. 4 to the negative third is on bottom, so we flip it, and that becomes 4 to the third on top, and we just put the 1 as a placeholder. So 1 times 4 to the third is 4 to the third. Well, and 1 to the third is just 1, and then 1 times 1 is still just 1. So this one, final answer, is 4 to the third. Okay. 10 over x raised to the 4th power. That's going to be 10 to the 4th power divided by x to the 4th power. Okay. This is going to be, so the 4 applies to everything inside the parentheses. So this really is going to be 2 to the 4th times b to the 4th on top and 3 to the 4th on bottom. 2 to the 4th is 16. So that's 16b to the 4th. 3 to the 4th power is 81. Okay, all right, let's go back. Since we've seen a few examples, let's go back and tackle this one. Okay, so the 3 applies to both the 1, so that's 1 to the third, and on the bottom, 4 to the third. And remember, all of that is times r to the third, and we'll just put a placeholder 1. Okay, well, 1 to the third is just 1. 4 to the third, 4 times 4 times 4, that's 64. So 1 times 1 times 1 times r to the third on top is r to the third. 4 times 4 times 4 times 1 on the bottom is 64. Okay. 4 times 3 is inside the parentheses, and those are actual numbers. They're not variables that I don't know the value of. And remember your PEMDAS. So actually I can just say 4 times 3, which is 12. This becomes 12 to the third power. 12 times 12 is 144, and 144 times 12 is 1,728. Okay, this is going to become 2 to the negative 3 times b to the negative 3. 2 to the negative 3 is the same as 1 over 2 to the third. B to the negative third, or negative 3, is 1 over b to the third. All right, so on top you have a 1, and on bottom 2 to the third is 8, and then multiplied by b to the third. 8 b to the third. Okay. Again, the 3 applies to everything inside the parentheses, so this is going to be 5 to the third times x to the third times y to the third. 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. 125, x to the third, y to the third. I can't really simplify it any further than that. Okay. Down here, this is 6 to the 1/2, which is basically something raised to the 1/2 power. You're being asked to take the square root of it. So the square root of 6 times the square root of a times the square root of r. And actually you can combine them, and that's the square root of 6ar, because they're all multiplied together and they're all raised to the 1/2 power. Okay, last one, 3 over 2 times q raised to the negative third power. Okay, so the negative third tells me to flip, so this becomes 2 over 3, each one to the third this time. Q to the negative third is 1 over q to the positive 3. All right, so on top we have 2 to the third, which is 8. And on the bottom, 3 to the third is 27. And then you just have to leave the q to the third. Okay. All right, let's do the rest of this power of a quotient column. Okay, there might be a bell that rings in a minute, but just disregard it. This is going to be 5 to the negative 2 power over 4x to the negative 2 power. Okay, 5 to the negative 2, flip it, that's 1 over 5 squared. Basically, right now you have 1 over 4x to the negative 2. Flip it, so the 4 comes up, 4x comes up into the numerator, and now it's to the positive, and I'll just put a 1 placeholder. Okay, that 2 applies to both things. So on the top, I have 1 times 4 squared times x squared. 4 squared is 16, so we just put 16x squared on the top. 5 times 5 is 25 times 1. So we have 25 on bottom. Okay. Here, I can do 3 squared times r squared divided by r squared. And it cancels. But really, I can just look in here, deal with my parentheses first, and just do this. Because I'm going to wind up with just 9 at the end, because the r's will cancel out. Okay, this one, the squared applies to both the pi and the x. So on top, I'm going to have pi squared. And in the denominator, I'm going to have x squared. Okay, here, again, this is going to be 1 to the third divided by 10 to the third. 1 times 1 times 1 is still just 1. 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000.